Over the last 3 off-seasons, the Detroit Lions have been the absolute masters of the draft. With the 4th off-season coming up for Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, the real question is, will they destroy the draft once more? We're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned.
We used to be a team no one respected. We used to be a team no one feared. That was then. This is now.
First victory of the year on the line. Goff's got it. Back, looks, throws, end zone. Yes! Caught!
You know who we are.
10, 5, end zone, touchdown Detroit Lions!
And you know where to find us. We won't be far. We'll be on your front porch waiting for you. We are the New Era Lions. And
we are driven by Detroit.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving in. But before we do so, again, I just want to say thank you all to my loyal fans and subscribers. You guys are absolutely wonderful, and I'm thankful for each and every one of y'all. And to those that are new people that are watching my show, thank you all for giving my show a shot. I hope you all enjoy the content. But even more so, I hope to gain your subscription if I've earned and deserved it. And with that being said to everybody, God bless. Hope you all are having a great day. Let's get into it. So, here's the thing, folks. When the Lions enter into the draft arena this April, all eyes are going to be on them. But it's not just because of them. They're going to particularly be on what Brad Holmes is going to do in this draft. Because obviously we know the Detroit Lions as a team, they're going to definitely have a lot of attention. But when it comes to the draft, the one person that gets all attention, the one person that gets all the praise and or criticism when it comes to draft day decisions is going to be Brad Holmes. Because that right then and there is the big time to shine or dim, if you will, for an NFL GM. It's like, listen, what you do during a draft is going to set you up as being either a hero or as a freaking, a GOAT. It really depends on which way you want to go. So, the way I look at it is that if you think about it, all attention is going to be given to what Holmes and the Lions are doing this year due to the fact of, well, let's understand it first and foremost. Brad Holmes, like I said in the intro, he has been an absolute master of being able to, manipulate and extrapolate talent from the draft regardless of what position or circumstance he may or may not be in. I have said this in the past, but when it comes to the draft, Brad Holmes is literally a maestro. He is literally a man among boys in most cases because he knows how to get the most out of the draft without putting his team in a situation that is either uncomfortable or is going to overextend them in terms of what they have to work with. That is why I love Brad Holmes' ability to operate as the GM of the Detroit Lions because he is both smart and he is also very, very effective in being able to get the most for the Lions without putting them in danger. Now, when we take a look at the 2024 draft that's upcoming, the Lions are also going to be in the highlighted position more so than just because of Brad Holmes, but also because of the fact that the draft is in Detroit. And it's the first time that the NFL draft has been hosted in Detroit. And if you realistically want to take it a step further, it's the first time that a major NFL event has been happening in Detroit since the Super Bowl back in 2005. So it's been almost 20 years since the Lions have hosted a severely big NFL event of some type. So this is a really big moment for the Lions, and it's something that the NFL world is really going to pay attention to. Because if the Lions do a really great job hosting the NFL draft, then there's a chance that the NFL draft could come back in the later years. But the whole point is that because of that, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be watching the draft. They're going to want to see how the Lions host the rest of the NFL. They're going to want to see what the Lions do during said event. And then finally, you have to think about it from this perspective. The Lions making it to the NFC Conference Championship game. A lot of people are going to want to see what will the Lions do to potentially continue their success. How are they going about to, reinforce the roster even further to ensure that they can not only get back to the conference championship game, but can they get to the ultimate game, the Super Bowl? So there's a lot of things that right now are riding on this draft, especially for Brad Holmes and especially for the Detroit Lions, not only as an organization, but as the city of Detroit as well. Now, when we think about this draft is a little bit different for the Lions than what has been in the last couple of years, because unlike the past couple of years, the Lions are not exactly dealing with a very high draft pick. Rather, they're dealing with the lowest draft pick that they've had since 1992. Think about that. In 1992, they picked at number 26, and that was when they selected Robert Porcher. So this has been a long time for the Lions to pick this low in the draft. Now, the question that many will have about Brad Holmes is, what will he do? Is he going to stay put in the draft, or is he going to move in the draft? This is a question that happens damn near every year for an NFL GM. But this year, there's a lot of stuff that's riding on this question, because in the past, Brad Holmes has shown either a willingness to move up or down regardless of circumstance, because we've seen him move up and we have seen him move down in the first round. Case in point, if you go back to 2022's draft, Brad Holmes decided to move up with the Vikings to acquire Jameson Williams and Josh Pascal in a deal. What he did is he traded picks 32, 34, and 66 to get the Vikings 12 and 46, which, as we know, acquired Jameson Williams at number 12 and Josh Pascal at pick number 46. Then in 2023, he did the exact opposite. He moved down with the Cardinals to acquire guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and also Broderick Martin. Now, the reason why I'm including Broderick Martin in there is because there was a separate trade that was used while also getting that first trade in the trade down. Because in the first trade where Brad Holmes traded down, he traded 6 and 81 to acquire 12, 34, and 168. He then used 168 along with two other picks, 122 and 139, to move up to 96, if I recall correctly, to get Broderick Martin. So my whole point is this. Brad Holmes has shown that he is not afraid to either move up or move down regardless of what is going on in the draft. If he thinks that there's a move to be made and it makes sense to him, he will make the move. So it's like, okay, we've seen Brad Holmes stay put in the draft. We've seen Brad Holmes move up. We've seen Brad Holmes move down. The question is, what will Brad Holmes do in this draft? That is like the $1 million question for a lot of Lions fans, because for Brad Holmes this year, there's a lot of ways he can go about this. So we're going to take a look at those ways. So let's think about it this way. Could Brad Holmes trade up? Yes, he could. This year, Holmes may not have necessarily the abundance of picks that he normally has had in the past, but you have to understand something. Brad Holmes can still wheel and deal if he so chooses to. He could still trade up if he felt strongly enough about a player to make a move. Now, obviously, some people's initial reaction is going to be, okay, but again, the Lions don't necessarily have an abundance of picks either this year or next year. So how would Brad Holmes facilitate a trade like that? Well, number one, he still could trade. He just would, shortchange himself for the next draft potentially. Or, and again, I put heavy emphasis on this word or, Brad Holmes could decide to trade players with picks to teams. Because again, Brad Holmes has also done that in the past. If you go back to last year's draft, Brad Holmes traded DeAndre Swift to the Eagles and got picks from them for that. In fact, that's how he got the 4th round pick from the Philadelphia Eagles this year. So we have seen Brad Holmes use players in draft trades as well. So I decided to say, well, let's just think hypothetically here. Are there any guys that are currently on the roster that you could use as draft day candidates that you could trade with? So I said, okay, realistically, in my opinion, there are 3 guys. The 3 guys that are, in my opinion, that you could use as potential draft day bait as trading package options would be Levi Onwuzurike, Derek Barnes, and James Mitchell. I'm not going to include Hendon Hooker in there for 2 separate reasons. Number one, it makes no sense, in my honest opinion, to trade Hendon Hooker because it's like, okay, we already know Teddy Bridgewater has retired. There's no reason they're going to trade Hendon Hooker. Plus, on top of that, you're actually going to accrue a higher dead cap hit than you would in salary cap savings if you were to trade Hendon Hooker. So in my honest opinion, it doesn't make any sense to trade Hendon Hooker. So I was like, okay, we're not even going to include him in this conversation. And the reason why I say that is because there have been people that have specifically said, well, couldn't we use Hendon Hooker as a trade option? You could, but I don't see Brad Holmes making that trade. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. It literally just does not make a damn bit of sense to me why, freaking the Detroit Lions would actually go to that length to trade a guy that they brought in to be a backup quarterback solution for the next couple of years. So that to me just doesn't make any sense. But the other three guys I'm talking about, Levi Onwuzurike, Derek Barnes, James Mitchell, these are all guys that you could use as trade bait. Here's the reason why. First and foremost, all three of these guys, the dead cap hit is substantially lower than what you would get in terms of saving money by trading them. Plus, on top of that, all three of these guys have some value. Obviously, some more than others. I ranked them as Levi Onwuzurike having the top value, Derek Barnes have second top, and then James Mitchell having the least amount of value. Now, I'm going to put up on the screen so that way I don't necessarily have to talk about all the numbers here, but if you take a look at Levi, Derek, and James, this is the amount of dead cap hit versus the amount of savings money you would get by trading them. Now, how could you possibly facilitate a trade-up in this situation? Well, let's understand something here. If the Lions were truly going to trade up, they're most likely going to want to trade up in the first round to something that's a little bit more closer to about the midpoint of the first round. They're not necessarily wanting to trade up into the top 10. They don't need to trade up into the top 10. But if they wanted to, they could say, well, we could trade up into somewhere like pick number 15 to 25. We only need to move up a couple of picks to get a guy that we really, really like. Which, for some people, what I'm specifically talking about is either cornerback or a edge rusher. Because if you feel the need that, hey, if I could go out and grab somebody like maybe a Jared Verse, or maybe I could go out and grab a guy like Kool-Aid McKinstry or Terrion Allen or Nate Wiggins, it's like, okay, if you could go out, and I think it's Terrion Arnold, pardon me, if you can go out and get some of those guys, and all you have to do is maybe trade your first round pick this year, which is pick 29, maybe a mid-round pick as well this year, or a mid-round pick next year, plus a player to help facilitate or grease the wheels for that trade, then I could see potentially Brad Holmes entertaining that notion. Now, whether or not, Dan Campbell's going to agree with it, because we know how much he loves his players, that remains to be seen. But what I'm simply trying to say here is that it is possible that Brad Holmes could trade up if there was an option to where he could go and get one of those players that he would be considering of a cornerstone player. That's why I'm saying it is possible that Brad Holmes could trade up if he so chose to. Now, the opposite end of that coin is, could Brad Holmes trade down? Yes, there is also a possibility that Brad Holmes could trade down. Now, this move, in my honest opinion, of trading down is not only one that I could see Brad Holmes using, but I believe that Brad Holmes will strongly consider it this year. Because we have to understand something. When you take a look at the difference in talent between a bottom first round pick versus a top second round pick, or even a mid second round pick, there's not much difference really between the two. Think about it this way, folks. Think about how the Lions draft went last year. They had picks at 12 and 18. Well, then think about it after that. You had then freaking Sam Laporta, I believe, was at pick number 34, and then you had Brian Branch, who was at pick 45. Those are both high to mid second round draft picks, but those guys were first round talents. So it's like, okay, here, you could trade out of the first round and still get a first round talent in the second round if you play your cards right. Now, that's why I'm saying the talent difference on draft day for those guys is virtually indistinguishable. Obviously, in a couple years after that, you'd be able to make that difference a little bit more clearly, because it takes a couple of years before you can effectively grade a draft, like Brad Holmes has said. But here's what isn't indistinguishable. If you trade down on draft night, the value you get back from trading out of the first round into picks later on, that is substantially much different. Think about it this way, folks. I decided to go back and check out some drafts to see of potential trade down options that happened near the end of the first round for guys or teams that wanted to trade back up into the first round. Go back to 2021. This actually happened twice. The Titans and the Jets made one trade where the Titans traded pick number 26 and 101 to the Jets to get their 35th pick, their 69th pick, and their 163rd pick. So they got a second, a third, and a fifth by trading away a second and a very late third pick. That right there makes a lot of sense to me. Another trade that happened in 2021 was the Bucs and the Jags. The Bucs only traded their 21st overall pick, which was a first round pick, and they got back a second, a fourth, and a sixth pick, which was the 33rd overall pick, the 106th pick, and the 180th pick. That is a trade that makes a lot of sense to me. And then finally, the last trade I could find, you had to go back to 2016, but again, it still proves my point. It was with the Chiefs and the 49ers. The Chiefs traded their first round pick and a 7th round pick, number 28 and 249, to the 49ers to get pick number 37, 105, and 178. Another one that involved a 2nd, 4th, and 6th round pick. Now, why does this make sense to me? The reason it makes sense is because, okay, if you could get a high 2nd round draft pick, you could still get a very good guy in the top of the 2nd round. You could get a Chop Robinson. You could get a Darius Robinson at that point. You could get a Kyrie Jackson that I've talked about. You could still get guys that could be considered fringe 1st round talents, but you don't necessarily have to pay that 1st round talent buy-in. And then you could get more draft talent, more draft capital in the later rounds. Because think about it. If the Lions were to trade back and they were to get a 2nd, 4th, and a 5th, or a 2nd, 3rd, and 5th, 2nd, 4th, and 6th, or 2nd, 3rd, and 5th, at that point then the Lions would have 2 2nd round draft picks, 3 3rd round draft picks, and they would also have 2 4th round draft picks and 2 5th round draft picks. At that point, the Lions would have a substantial amount of draft capital for the rest of the draft and still not really be losing a whole lot. So for me, what I'm clearly demonstrating here is Brad Holmes could use pick number 29 to garner more picks, which he could in turn allow for more options in the current draft and beyond potentially. Because think about it. Brad Holmes could trade back and then could use those trades that he just acquired to trade up to get another player in the 2nd round if he really likes them. Or he could say, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't like anybody right now. I'll trade back and garner more picks for next year. That's another possibility. If there is one thing we know about Brad Holmes is that he likes drafting guys later in the round because, well, number one, he sees it as a challenge per his words. He thinks it's much more of a challenge to draft guys in the later rounds, but at the same time, that's where you can really make the most bang for your buck, a.k.a. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Aleem McNeil, Kirby Joseph, freaking James Houston, Malcolm Rodriguez. These are all guys that were drafted in the third round or later, and they have been absolute godsends for the Lions. So to me, by trading back, Brad Holmes keeps all doors open to possible scenarios, whether it's trading up later in the draft or trading back later in the draft. Now, in my honest opinion, if you take a look at what I just presented, I would wager that there is more of a chance that Brad Holmes trades back than trades up. I think there's about a 60% chance that Holmes is going to trade back for 2 reasons. One, like I said, it gives more options and flexibility, not only for this draft, but also for next year's draft. But it also saves the Lions cap money because think about it. Not only could you potentially still get a 1st round draft pick in terms of talent in the 2nd round, you're saving 1st round draft pick money by only drafting them in the 2nd round. There is a substantial difference between what kind of money you get paid in the 1st round versus the 2nd round. However, though, there is also the added bonus of the fact that you don't get the 5th year option in the 1st round. So that would be something that Brad Holmes would have to weigh in that situation. But the point of the matter is there is reasons and there is a good value in why you should trade back if you're looking to get more value in the draft this year. I don't know if that's what Brad Holmes wants to do or not because we have heard him say that he wants to be active in free agency this year. So that will definitely also influence what the Lions do in the draft. If they're more active in free agency, they might be less aggressive in the draft. But I do think that the Lions could, if the right option, the right, scenario presents itself, they could decide to say, hey, you know what? If there's a guy we really like that's up at pick 15, maybe to 25, we have the capital to move up and get him if we so choose to. I don't see a reason why Brad Holmes would not make a trade. I don't see any reason why he would fail to pull the trigger because we've seen him do it in the past. So again, I would say that the outcome of Brad Holmes trading up is about 40%. I think that it's more likely he trades back, but I'm not going to completely dismiss the idea that Brad Holmes does not trade up. Now, obviously, some people are going to say, well, what about him staying put? He could decide to stay put as well, but I just don't think that given the spot that the Lions are this year, that he's going to stay put. I think Brad Holmes is going to make a move one way or the other. But either way, regardless of what happens, I just know this. This is the most fun time of the year for a lot of Lions fans. It's definitely a lot of fun for Brad Holmes and the Lions because now they get to really start doing some really good, honest draft scouting work, and this is where all of the hard work starts to pay off. When you start trying to come up with a draft strategy, and that's when we get to really see Brad Holmes cook. But Having said that, I think this is a good place to end the episode, so I'm going to do so and just say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past, forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, please subscribe. I'm thankful for every subscription that I can get my hands on. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure you turn on that bell notification icon as well, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. Again, subscription numbers are always going up, but we want to make sure you turn on the notification icon, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, just share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we share it, the greater the channel spreads, the greater the channel grows. And with that being said, to everybody, I just want to again say thank you all for watching the content. Thank you all for devoting some of your time to watching it. It really warms my heart that I have people that really care to listen to what I have to say. With that being said, if you decided to become a subscriber today, welcome to the MCM family. Again, so thankful to have you guys on the team. If I still haven't earned your subscription, hopefully I'll get a chance to do so in the next episode. But until that time, I just want to say to everybody, God bless, hope you'll have a great day, and until the next time we meet, I'll see y'all in the next episode.